AT&T CEO Randy Stevenson is headed to Capitol Hill today to make a pitch for his $39 billion takeover of T-Mobile USA and to assure Congress that it won't hurt competition in the mobile phone business. Now, making the counter-argument, the man who arguably stands to lose the most if this deal goes through, Sprint Nextel CEO Dan Hesse. Craig Moffett is here. He raised his price target for AT&T after the company announced its deal for T-Mobile. Craig is a telecom analyst at Sanford C. Bernstein. So, Craig, this is the first of what we can almost assuredly say will be many hearings on this subject, but as such, a very important one, particularly for Randy Stevenson, is it not?
It is. I think this is probably the beginning of at least a year-long process. So understand that, we're not even in the first inning yet. This is still batting practice. But we're going to be looking for a lot of important cues from Congress today to see how they're likely to view this deal. Are they going to view this deal on a national basis and what it does to competition? Are they willing to look at this on a local market basis that I think is much more favorable to AT&T?
Explain the difference. Explain the difference for viewers between looking at it on a national basis and the local basis, and why that's critical for AT&T.
Well, there are a few large national players for AT&T, Verizon, Sprint, and T-Mobile. Whether you look at it on a national or a local basis doesn't make any difference. But then there are some smaller regional players whose national market share is very small. So on a national basis, they don't really move the needle very much with respect to competition. But locally, they can actually matter. AT&T is trying to make the argument that, look, in any given market, there are 4, sometimes 5 different choices that a consumer can make. So there's still plenty of competition out there in wireless. The counter argument is you can't count a very small player the same way you count another Verizon or a Sprint or an AT&T.
So we know that AT&T has been lobbying furiously, and what you're waiting, when you say cues, I take it what you mean is you're waiting to see if those arguments that lobbyists and others have made are resonating with the congressman, whether they are starting to indicate that it's the local basis that matters the most.
That's right. And now you've got another couple of interesting developments. One is T-Mobile just reported terrible results last week, and in some ways that actually helps AT&T's case because they can make the argument that T-Mobile simply isn't viable as a standalone company anymore, and the weakness of their first quarter results just demonstrates that. AT&T has tried to create an air of inevitability around this, and Randall Stevenson will talk about it that way on the Hill today. Where the conversation is not whether or not this deal can get done, but is instead about what kind of conditions and divestitures do you have to expect in order for this deal to get done. If AT&T can get through today's hearing with that same feeling of inevitability, that it's about the conditions rather than the yes or no answer, then this will be a big win for AT&T today.
Craig, I need to move on because before you go, we have to talk about Microsoft Skype, because one of the most fascinating angles to this transaction is what Microsoft owning Skype means for the likes of AT&T and Verizon.
Well, and it's funny because Microsoft just entered into an agreement with Nokia to try to push their Windows 7 operating system for phone carriers. And the big customer for that operating system is obviously the carriers. But this is, I think, representative of a view that is deeply held all across Silicon Valley and the tech community, and that is that voice is just an application. And you'll have to forgive the carriers if they don't agree, because voice is still the vast majority of their revenues, and it is much more profitable than data. Voice typically is priced at about $1 a megabyte. Data is priced at about 5 cents a megabyte, and so it gives rise to this bandwidth arbitrage issue that the tech community is always trying to arbitrage high-price, low-bandwidth services like voice and text with low-price, high-volume services like data, which would eviscerate the economic model of the carriers. So again, you'll have to sort of forgive the carriers if they aren't cheering on the sideline saying, hey, Yahoo, we're so happy that that now Skype has an even bigger owner.
And it raises some fascinating questions about whether or not Nokia is going to be able to get the penetration that it wants with that Windows mobile platform. We're going to have to talk about it another time because we have to run, but please do come back and join us for more. Craig Moffett of Sanford C. Bernstein. We're talking about the AT&T T-Mobile hearings on Capitol Hill today.